Okay, let's go.
So I met you, Ivan, through Mahi quite a few years ago. So that was kind of like my first opportunity to connect with you. Growing up, like, identity was obviously always like a real thing for me. Like, I always was questioning like who I was and where I fit in, and like I was always like the one like in school, and yeah, I just always kind of felt like I was just that little bit different, and I just didn't really know where I belonged in kind of all of that kind of thing. And identity was always a thing for me. So I was like, well, like, who am I? I always felt like I didn't have anything to kind of like lean into in relation to like faith or like culture or anything like that. But I've realized that actually becoming a mum was my true, I don't know, purpose. And being a mum is like so core to my identity.
How beautiful.
And I go all in when it comes to my kids. And
another thing that we talk about even before we started recording is that authentic leadership. And I think my challenge is every time when I invite people, they immediately think about their role, their job, or community affiliation and so forth. And I have to clarify, it's like, no, what I'm truly looking for is someone who lives inside out, not outside in, and also that inside out. Just, you know, like, because it's so ironic, you just say you're having this struggle, even understand who you were before, but yet now you live in such authenticity of who you are. And it's just so beautiful. And I have to hear the journey you go through, you know, how you like to unpack that as how do you come to that, to have that inner understanding of who you are.
I mean, a journey in itself. So I guess like reflecting on like my life course, I guess I had a couple of like key milestone moments. And all of it relates to, again, like people and culture, because I always felt like I might maybe have that in myself. Okay, so the first kind of like shift, the fundamental shift I can remember happening for me was when I was 17. So when I was 17, I had the most incredible opportunity to travel over to Guangzhou in China.
Yeah, that's
for
awesome.
School.
Yeah.
And I was like, I went with, it was part of like the music and I was doing art history in school. So we were like, well, we're doing art history. It's history and art. So like we want to go too. So anyway, long story short, went over there for 2 weeks, and I think I just realized then that I had grown up as quite naive, like sheltered in like Aotearoa, and just like I guess sheltered from like the reality of like the world and what other people experience. I guess I kind of just thought the world was how it is, the way that I saw it. Anyway, so going over there, and it was like, you know, like it was just a completely different world, and the way people lived and the supports that they had, and I was just so exposed to real life. Like real life, and you know, like people that were, I guess, like living on the streets, people like our older persons, you know, that were they were working in like the restaurant, and like it was just different. It was, I guess what I'm saying. That was my last year of high school, second to last year of high school. Finished up high school, and then I went straight into university, right? And so I was like, I'm going to study psychology and ancient history, because like I loved anything to do with like the ancient history and archaeology and all of that. That was always like my passion piece from when I was little. But I always just wanted to understand like culture and people and just like how the mind works and like all of that kind of stuff in relation to like human connection. Really opened my eyes. It just like if you like just that analogy of like I went going in life, I just did not realize I was seeing life in kind of like this kind of very singular small frame view, and when I went there, like everything widened, and I was just so confronted. And I think because of that age of like 17, it's like that's a really quite, you know, formative like age, you know, you know, and you're on the precipice of like, you know, early adulthood and all of that kind of stuff. So just completely, you know, changed my whole mindset, and I just So then, coming into university and, doing all of that. And then I just studying and I felt really unprepared, actually. I don't know if this is not like a 90s kid thing, but like I really felt coming out of high school, like really unprepared for university.
Still the same.
Yeah, like
Still
university and stuff like that. I just was like, wow.
Still the same.
I kind of felt like I had to learn like so much more. Yeah. Anyway, like I was really enjoying university. But at the same time, and I guess like this is kind of one of those big other kind of like things that has always been running in parallel in my life, is that chronic anxiety, like social anxiety. And again, like this was part of what made me feel a bit of like different in my peer group. You know, back then in the 2000s and stuff, not very spoken about.
Exactly.
I'd been experiencing like since I was quite young, like I'm talking about like age 7, like panic attacks. And again, not knowing what they were at the time. But as I got older, I was able to explain them a little bit more, and didn't have a very good experience in like accessing some help and support at the time. So by the time I'm in like university, I'm like studying psychology, and I'm like, yes, like, you know, and I wanted to understand me. You know, like what was it about my brain that made me different to others? Like what was my brain? Was it an experience that was giving me this anxiety that was just like always sitting in like the pit of my stomach and really like preventing me from like, I guess like participating in life
I hear you.
fully.
I hear
right? Because you've always got that like, you know, that it's not a voice or anything like that. It's never been that for me. It's more like my body is telling me like, you know? Anyway, so then I was trying to reach out for help, and I thought it was just one of those things where like everything, what do you call when it compounds? You know, when everything compounds into like a single thing. So like I was in my second year of uni. I think I was working like 3 different part-time jobs. I was struggling in one of them with a co-worker. Going to my uni classes, like trying to keep on top of it all, you know. And then, I sought some help and support, and I got prescribed something to help deal with the anxiety. And I guess, like, knowing now, like, it was a single person who heard me for probably, like, 45 minutes. And then, you know, and again, you're in this position of, like, oh, like, I trust them, like, it's a medical professional, okay. And I've tried all the other things. I've tried like the talking and all of this, but I've never really felt like I've gotten some help to really help me move through like how to manage this anxiety and all of that. And that was, you know, what I could feel was like holding me back in a sense. I
can so relate to that.
Yeah.
Honestly. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. No, thank you, Ivan, for sharing that, because I think like a lot of people can relate. But again, like there's a veil of, there's still like a veil of like taboo on it. And so anyway, I got prescribed something, and it was clearly not suitable for me. And I just was like what you call almost like a bit of a zombie for about 9 months. My brain just completely shut. Like I just couldn't think. And I was being a deep thinker. And I realize now, I always thought that was a negative. I see it now as a positive.
It's beautiful.
I could do that whole life. If you could go back to your younger self and like talk to your younger self. Oh my God, I would tell my younger self like, oh, stop feeling like you need to. And I'll be quote Brene Brown so many times.
I love
Brene Brown. Oh my God. Like what she says about belonging. That the opposite to belonging is fitting in. And that's not being your true self. You're trying to be somebody else to fit in. You're not being who you are. You know, and again, if you think about those 3 fundamentals, connection, belonging, and identity. So I was struggling with all of that. For me, like my brain just like I couldn't think. It was such a bizarre experience. I just could not think. So what happens? I fail most of my exams. I think I couldn't retain information, whereas that was always something I was quite
good at.
I always could retain information. I could like kind of like you know, and again, it's all part of my like I've always been quite like a chatty and communicative person.
And also I think that's why you like I talk to you because you had inquisitive mind, like you're really curious about culture and really trying to understand and it's about like, can you share with me a bit more? So absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
I would say
and
so.
I do.
Yeah.
Like, I bring that back to those moments when I was in Guangzhou and like living with a family and like having a really beautiful connection with the with my homestay and like all of that. Yeah, it just completely opened my up to the rest of the world, and I just wanted to learn so much more about people and culture. So then so in university, going through that experience, I was just like, oh man, but through going that experience, I met another person in my class who noticed, because I don't know if this is an old school medication thing, but I was always shaking. I had the shakes. Yeah. And she noticed that I was shaking and she asked me about it. I said, oh, actually, like I've just been prescribed this thing. Yeah. She's like, oh, like I'm taking the same thing. And so we kind of bonded over that experience. Wow. And we became really, really close at university. And I felt like I wasn't alone in that journey. Yeah. Like different reasons for
that's so important though.
Using that. Yeah.
Because you don't feel like it's only you.
Yeah. And because I think as well, like there's that, and I think we do a lot better today where we know that things like medication is one of the many options of support. Exactly. It is really important for so many people, and that's awesome. It shouldn't just be the only thing. Only thing. I agree. And so I think for her and I, we were able to kind of like bond over that experience. We both felt like we weren't alone. Anyway, so like that was, again, like I do very well in any of my exams at the end, like of that semester after, like taking it for most of the year. And so I kind of was like, okay, I need to just stop this. And I stopped the medication, and I, with one of my friends at the time, bought a one-way ticket to the UK. I was like, I'm just going to go to London. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go on my OE. My parents were really supportive of that. Like, bless them. My parents have always been really supportive. So they were like, yeah, all good. Like, that's awesome for you. Go live your life. So I was like, yeah. So I did that. So going over the UK, traveling around the world, going to all the places that I wanted to see. And I think this is quite funny, like, because with just, I guess, like having that experience of like anxiety and like the panic attacks from such a young age, I always felt like, I spoke to this the other day with someone, I've always felt like I'm on a timer. Like I can hear the ticking of my humanity, right? Of my mortality, my existence. Absolutely. I have no idea why. Deep. Yeah. Like it's this, and again, this is something I have to just sit with. Wow. Sit with that kind of, and I think back now, again, this is the whole, if I could go back to my younger self, like, knowing that that's always been a thing for me as a no idea where it's kind of come from or anything that
just I suspect, that your existence in the world.
I've been very hyper aware of that. And then this, experiencing that and like just having to sit with that. Anyway, so because of that, corridor, I've had a bucket list. Like I wrote my bucket list really young. So what are all the things I want to achieve in my life before I'm no longer here anymore? Before that timer runs out, right? So one of those things was that I really wanted to go to London. I wanted to go to London by the time I was 21. So again, like almost ironically, like I had all these this experience where, uni was overwhelming. I was struggling because of the medication. I needed to just have a break and get out. And I think about it now too. Like I did all of high school, straight into uni, working all these jobs to try, So again, of course, it's going to be a lot. Jobs. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. And you're like, I'm like 19 by this time. So I go to the UK. I took a whole bunch of items off my bucket list. One of them being like I went to Egypt.
Awesome.
Wow. Yeah, I went to Egypt. It was just amazing. So I went to I experienced life, and I loved it. It was a bit lonely because I went over there with my a boyfriend at the time and didn't really know anyone, and so when we were, we had to get jobs and to like pay our rent, all that. So it was a bit lonely. I missed my family and all of that kind of stuff. But it was just like I was really like living and breathing like travel and like learning about other cultures. And and there was this one moment where I went to where was I? Edinburgh in Scotland. So I was with one of my friends. So she came over for a little bit on her OE, and we met up. We took the bus to Edinburgh, and we stayed the night there together. And then she had to bus home in the morning, and so I went and walked up the mountain that's there. And I sat on top of the mountain, and I was just like looking over like the city. And I remember, I think I rang one of my friends, and we had a bit of a chat. But I just remember feeling like this sense of just like, not necessarily peace.
Yeah.
But just the sense of like connection to the world, to the earth, to like like this really beautiful city that was, it was just this moment. Like I can still like, you know, when you think about some of those memories, you can the air on your skin, like you can feel the temperature, like it was just one of those core kind of moments.
Really live in the present, and like that Martin Solomon had mentioned, that flow of energy. You just like in that moment, everything just come to you. You one with the world. That is amazing.
So that moment was what then opened up that, I guess, love for connecting with nature.
Wow.
And like things like hiking.
Yeah.
And like those are some of the things that when my hardest moments, I will lean into as my coping mechanisms and my strategies to do that. Yeah. And again, it's now I think about it, it's one of the options. It's one of the options that I can choose from if I'm going through a really rough time. So that was one of those significant kind of defining. Like just moments that really sat with me, and I was on my own. And I think that's one thing that like really having to get comfortable with is aloneness, but not being lonely.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And I think, like again, like growing up, feeling like I'm a bit of the odd one out. Like I was the odd one out of my friend group, and like all of this, albeit like relatively confident. So like a lot of people, when they find out, like, oh, I would have no idea that you've like, you know, experienced anxiety or like had any of this, because you come across as like so confident. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I don't, maybe it's a bit of a like, like my own internal coping mechanism is I just, you know, like step in and kind of like just be that person. But then afterwards I'm like washed out, you know, like how I think some people who experience like the, you know, being an extrovert and an introvert, after an introvert's gone and done all this extrovert stuff, you know, it really hits home afterwards. You kind of have to debrief for like 2-3 days. So I would find like that kind of stuff, like as soon as I've finished like being that confident person, then like afterwards would just feel real like unconfident. Almost.
And but I love what you just say about beforehand. You say if you could go back and just do one thing different to tell Jordyn how awesome she is. I can totally get it. Like that's one thing. But another thing I love the most is you're embracing every part of yourself. The vulnerability of yourself, that confidence connect to the earth, earthy Jordyn, you know, like that go gather, like want to see the world. That's who we are. We don't just have one facet of persona. We multifaceted.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's like what I've like come to learn is that like like we're multifaceted human beings, and there's so many layers and complexity to all of us. And I think maybe like whether it was high school or what have you, but always felt like there was a box and I had to fit into it or not. I chose not. And then I felt like because of that, I had to deal with the anxiety and the feelings
I'm right,
of like...
you're authentic. Because you choose not to fit into the box. Awesome.
And again, like that narrative though, as like a teen, is like feeling like associating that with a negative.
I agree.
It's over those years that I had to learn this is not a negative. This is a positive.
The courage to be who you are is a hard job. It's so easy just to conform to the norm and pretend to be someone else. Never have to show up to the world, but to really say, I don't care what the F other people say, this is who I am, because that's where you get most disagreement, challenge, and all that. And then you have to stand on your ground and say, I'm not going to back down. That is courage, my friend. Yeah. Sorry, you carry on.
No, that's really beautiful. I came back from the UK. I felt so reset. I ditched doing psych. I went back to uni. I changed my papers to anthropology papers.
Awesome.
So I was really interested in, culture. How, I wanted to be that person who would just sit within a cultural group and just observe and learn and soak it all up and be a part of it. And I just was so interested in all of that. And then I took some papers around social and medical anthropology, and that's where I learned about things like structural violence and how our systems and structures in place within a system that people exist in can perpetuate harm. So that was a real eye-opener for me. And I became really interested in that kind of stuff. So then, at that time, and then I was working part-time, and I just life was a little bit more settled, and I felt more driven and clear-headed, and felt like I'd lived my life. I'd lived my life because I'd done a whole bunch of travel over those 13 months over in the UK and around Europe and there. And then anyway, I was in this, I was working a part-time job in a call centre. And then I attribute so much to this woman who was my team leader in the call center. So I applied for this job, and it was a externally funded role that was in this organization. And she was like, "You got to apply for it." She was like, "You do not belong here in a call center." And again, this is where the communication, being a communicator, got me in trouble a couple of times because I'm on a call center, and sometimes people would be frustrated about things that are happening, and I would sometimes be a bit hey, but you can't talk to other people that way, kind of thing. Anyway, so she really supported me to apply for this job, and then I got offered it literally the day that I graduated. So it was kind of like a sign.
Wow.
And that's the role, that is the mahi that set me on this trajectory of to where I am now.
Amazing.
Working kind of in that sector of suicide prevention and postvention, and over the years it's been alcohol and other drug harm, rangatahi well-being.
So she really saw what you can offer instead of saying, "Oh, you're not good, so we're going to..." Wow.
And again, that was not from doing all these perfect things. It was actually really imperfect. Because I had made some big mistakes, but she saw how genuine I was at the core of it all. So I really attribute so much of my journey to her just supporting me and having faith in me. I really, really acknowledge those kind of turning moments and feeling supported. And again, feeling did I belong here? But she didn't shame me for it. She supported me to go into a space where it would be it could be nurtured. And then again, running in parallel to all of this is the chronic anxiety, is going through this experience of anxiety and trying to find some answers, right? Really trying to be what's wrong with me? I just don't want this. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to be this way, right? And then I finally saw someone. So I used to go to this place, and I saw, it was frustrating because I'd see someone for a couple of sessions and then they'd move on, and I'd get a new person. I know that that's probably a really common experience, and maybe something that puts people off.
Absolutely.
Feeling like they have to retell the story. Gosh. So that was frustrating because every new person has their own worldview, their own experience. They're trying to understand my life course. And I'm part of me just thinks bro, did you read my notes? Did you make, genuinely though, did you make an effort to get to know who I am before I came here? Because this is huge to me. This is my whole life.
And when people have to retell their story, they relive their traumatized, re-traumatize them. That's the challenge, it means that every time you go back, instead of getting the support, literally you're being re-traumatized again with your own, And so anyway, I saw this really wonderful lady, and she was the first person that ever said to me, she was like, "Jordyn, you are going to have this your whole life. This is part of who you are." Wow. It's like a Disney movie. This is who you are. Yeah. And I want to help you. She's like, I just want to help you,
like, you know, move through it. So when you have a panic attack, I want to help you move through it. I want to help you learn how to live with this. And I just sat there like in that frustration of like, why didn't anyone tell me this? The whole time, it was like, you know, into my early 20s. So again, if you think back from beginning of like around 7 years old, this is a lot of years, you know, like, yeah.
I know how big it is because someone living with anxiety is the biggest challenge. Everybody tell you how wrong it is with that feeling. No one have say you don't need. So I'm so sorry. So I know what that means. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought like, why couldn't someone tell me this? Back then, when I was going through like this, feeling like I don't belong, all of this, what's wrong with me, constantly feeling like there's this deficit. And she's just like, it's part of who you are, Jordyn.
I just want to put this in the record. You're the first one who made me cry. See who else is going to make me cry in the future, but that is just so amazing. Sorry.
No, never apologize. I think this is another thing is like, and we talked about this before when we started, like, I think so much of this generation, us millennials and that, like we've had to feel like we need to apologize for our existence.
True.
I don't see that as much in this like new generation, but I feel like our generation always kind of felt we had to apologize for existing, like apologizing for having emotion, like, and I just think the amount of times I've said sorry to somebody else if I've had an emotion or something's happening, and I don't do that anymore. I never apologize for something I shouldn't have to apologize for, especially if it's in regards to being who I am and my existence, especially if I'm not hurting anybody, you know? And it's like something I really want to build into my children as well. It's like,
I agree.
You know, just feeling really confident who they are, not feeling like they need to apologize for.
Seriously, what a gift to your children.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, again, I think this whole new generation, like, that's the way. But me growing up always felt like you had to apologize for existing or having emotion or being, you know, that one that, didn't fit in or what have you. So that was one of those huge moments, like this almost like complete shift of like, okay.
Wow.
But in saying that, I think back to and I think, okay, I'm really lucky. I've over these years of experience of like traveling and having these amazing opportunities, and I'm super grateful for that. I've managed to already build a bit of like, you know, my own kit, my toolkit of like, okay, to work through all of this. So she was able to help me deal with the whole like, okay, now we've come to this, you know, moment of like, you're never going to get fixed because you're not broken.
Exactly.
It's part of who you are, and I want to help you with that. So that was, again, such a defining moment, and I was able to really look at myself and just love myself a little bit more and be like, okay, I can work with that. And now I know I don't have to spend so much time and energy trying to fix. I even got to a point when I was studying psychology, so that first 2 years of uni, I like messaged one of my lecturers and I said, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. I've had it since I was a kid. I need it to be fixed. I want to fix it and I need your help. And who would you recommend that I can talk to? Always trying to find these answers. Another reason why I obviously went to that medical professional to get the medicine to fix the problem. Again, that mindset of so lucky to have had that moment with that woman, and then she ended up leaving. So I never saw her again, and I was absolutely gutted. But I was like, okay, at least she gave me that one gift, that gift of being able to just like, you know, reset again of like, okay, I know this now. This mahi, doing this mahi, learning in this new role, and then going into this alcohol and other drug role that I was in for about 6 years before I came into my current role. But I was in that role when I guess I had one of those life moments where my world fell apart, essentially.
And that is part of what we also want to focus on, and something that you also felt quite passionate about, isn't it? It's like how the world has structures in a way that we look at grief in a different setting, especially grief with female in a setting that, you know, like have certain expectation or it became too easy or too common that people don't even really think about it. So I just want you to carry on the story.
And I guess, like, again, building up to this is like being in this workplace where I had a really amazing team. And that was the team I was with when I first got pregnant with my daughter. So I got married. I had come back, I found out I was pregnant, and so I was in this team. So they saw like the kind of like journey for me too, like into motherhood, which was really nice. So I love this team. And then I think I remember this is where I first heard this, I guess, like corridor of like being unapologetic or being your authentic self. So like, I think I went for an interview for like a senior role, and I think I was doing the apologizing, when I wasn't feeling like I was saying the right things, or like, this is one thing I actually do it now in the workplace. I give a caveat. I say I talk with my hands and I can talk really fast. So now instead of like, I don't apologize for it, I give it as like a caveat. So like in this interview, they said something, the person who ended up being my team leader was like, feel like comfortable and unapologetic and like being your authentic self. And I was like, thank you. Again, that permission thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Not feeling like people or I need permission, but like in that setting, I absolutely did. I was like, thank you. I can be myself. And that's okay, because they know me and they know I do the mahi really well with passion. And I shouldn't have to like apologize for just being me.
Absolutely.
So that again was quite like mentally, it was quite a shift of like acceptability in the workplace. So I really, really loved that they said that, and I felt like I was able to relax a bit more, say in the interview, and then just be able to continue kind of like living that. And I think again, when you talk about permission, in moments where you're in like group settings, it's giving myself that permission to be unapologetic, being authentic, and just sharing what's on my mind. And I would do that quite often, with when I mentioned how I'm like good at the information retention. And again, from being at university, having that kind of academic mindset, when I'm in a workplace and I'm trying to share the reality of the world, I lean into academic stuff. So always kind of sharing that. And again, like it can come across as quite like, intense. And again, like I know that can be a bit of a thing for me, and people have said that to me in the past. Like, oh, you're quite intense. You're very I like
your intensity, honestly.
Oh, thank you.
I
like it too now.
Intensity. I call it passion.
Yes. I call it passion too. I'm really passionate. And like for me, again, that passion is because I feel really deeply. Some people aren't supported to like let that trueness out. And again, it's like that conformity and like being in a box and learning like be a certain way or what have you, don't be too loud and like all of that kind of stuff. So like being in those moments of I was had my children, and I was getting back into the workplace, and then this was, so I guess the timeline you're looking at just before COVID hit.
Oh, okay.
Just before COVID. And so, like, obviously things are challenging. Like I'm a mum, got two young children. I was doing, like, some volunteer work as well. Really loved my mahi. Feeling like, confident in who I am, but also like nurturing the new identity that is me as a and love being a mum. Like
you have so much love.
I loved it. And again, that's another thing. I feel really deeply, think really deeply, feel really deeply.
I love it.
All of that, and then the first lockdown was hard, but got through it. Really like that I had the time, kids and all of that. But then, come second lockdown, I think like day 3 into the lockdown, like my marriage ended. Oh. And that was what I talk about when I mean like my world completely fell apart. And it's not like it came out of the blue. Like, we knew that things were a bit, and all in respect to the other person. We knew that things weren't great, but still, like when you go through that, like it's like you really do feel like the world just drops out from under your feet. And I just remember, because it's a bit of a blur now. They talk about how like your brain kind of shuts down when you kind of go through some of those things, right? I remember like I took my kids on a walk on one of the days, and I just remember, this is like a couple of days later, like my legs like felt like concrete. Like I felt like I had concrete as legs, and because it was just so heavy to take a single step forward. But I was trying to, get fresh air, connect with my kids, just was like, okay. As I was kind of facing, going through the motions, the only word I could use to describe what it was I was feeling was grief. That was the only word I could use. And I had to just think, okay, like, how am I going to get through this? When the nights that I didn't have my kids, I would watch a lot of the TED Talks, and I watched that Brene Brown's like Power of Vulnerability several times.
I love her
because I was like, I have to live by this
absolutely.
now. I have to live by this, and we know again what Brene says is like vulnerability sits really close to or right next to shame.
Wow,
are some really incredible people out there that are complete strangers that just those single micro moments of kindness can have significant impact on somebody. I have to get through this. So one of the key things I did was like, for example, like I went to my kids, when I did drop off at my kids' kindy, I had a big chat with the receptionist there, and like she was just so kind and supportive. And then all the teachers were really kind and supportive, and they got some books out for my kids, like, Having Two Homes, Vulnerable, The Invisible String, and started reading those books to my kids, and like letting me borrow the books and stuff like that. So that was a key kind of like thing for me, where I was like, okay, like I'm going to talk about this really openly, because that was a nice positive interaction.
Absolutely.
And I was like, okay, I can do this, I can do this.
I wish all the parents would have your courage, though, because what you're teaching your children is to name the truth and tell the truth and feel it.
And name the feeling,
Exactly, and having teachers who are emotionally available and teaching them is okay. There's nothing shame about it as well. The harder thing is when children have to go to school and pretend everything's still okay, and inside then they feel something but they can't tell anyone. And
I love like that, taking like a child-centric approach. So like I always pose questions to my kids, you know, like, oh, you know, do you want to talk about it? Like, and a lot of the times, like, oh no, I don't want to talk about it. But I do remember like this one time, my daughter, we were eating sushi, I think, at the mall, and and again, because I'm a communicator and I'm just like random, I just was like, oh, do you have any questions about like mummy and daddy, or like, do you want to talk about anything? And for the first time, my daughter was like, oh, actually, I do have a question.
Wow.
I was like, oh, yeah. I'm like, tell me, what is it? And, oh, why did you and daddy break up? What happened? And like, so we were able to just have like a really nice, age-appropriate conversation. And again, no blame, no shame. You know, talking about how like, oh, we decided that we needed to live in different homes, and like, you know, we just needed to learn like how to be friends again, but we both really love you, and it's nothing that you guys did. Again, being really child-centric and really like open on it, and really thanking her for like asking this question and reminding her that she can ask. And I mean, like, that's, I just think like, how many mums might go through things like this, or parents go through things and they don't know, like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Or, but again, I just had to be kind of guided by being my authentic self, whether it's as a person in the workplace, or as a parent, as a mum, as someone in my community, you know, like just trying to be honest and...
But Jordyn, because that's what interests me is, you know, like, because nowadays, society has been so desensitized with people separated, you know, divorce and all that. So it almost like when you do that, you should be able to get over from A to B, and then just telling people you'll be there, don't worry, you'll be there. But the journey, no one in society today truly talking about the journey.
Yes, agreed.
From A to B.
Yes, and I think that was something that was really apparent to me quite early on in my journey. I was like, I don't know where to go or who to talk to about this, because, you see the people, like, again, there's that kind of normality thing. And I don't think social media helps in this respect, where you see a lot of these, like, social media accounts where it's like, blended family. And, a lot of these, like, American TV shows on Nickelodeon or, like, on Netflix or what have you, where it's, like, these blended families and, like, it's all, like, and I talk about this with quite a few of people that I know in my life, where I've thought it was never apparent to me the longevity of this grief and this loss. It is a long journey.
Absolutely.
And that's why, again, I kept coming back to that definition of grief. And again, I tried really hard not to feel ashamed by it. But if I'm being honest, I definitely felt things like embarrassment. Embarrassment that, like, after about 18 months, I was still crying. I was still struggling. And again, it's not like, there was still that notion of, like, we both, it was somewhat mutual and all of that. And like, like I've talked to you about, like, my partner at the moment and all of that. But it was like, I truly grieved the future, that future.
Absolutely.
And I grieved what, the grief of, like, who I could have been. Could I have been somebody different, or like, my life have been different, or like, there was just so much grief, and it was so hard to explain to some people, and I felt a bit embarrassed about it, because I just thought, like, again, so many people have gone through such harder stuff than this. But, like, I should be able to just get through this, right? And I was invalidating myself. I was always invalidating myself. And I shouldn't be doing that.
No, because I was going to say that as well. Imagine, like, every wedding ceremony is a landmark of your life. And when you stood there in front of the altar, you don't think about, this is not going to work, isn't it?
No, never.
Exactly. So everybody sink their heart into it and wanted this to work, and then we all are storyteller, and then we start having story about how the future is going to look like, how this journey is going to end, and then because you want to stay, you allow yourself to have hope, aspirations, and a future with that person. When suddenly that person say, "Oh, sorry, like, we're just going to stop here," how are you going to start to even like a new story about your future? It's not like you just can cut it off and say, like, rip it off from a storybook and say, I'm just going to rewrite it. Then how am I going to land my feet on a new chapter?
And it was, to me, it was a strange experience too, where, like, I felt like I had worked through some of that stuff in relation to, like, the person. I knew, like, that was a thing, but the one thing I grieve the most about, and, like, again, this is where I didn't want to feel embarrassed or ashamed about it, and I had to try and make sense of it in some way or form. And again, the only way I could do this was being really loud about it, and also just, like, my friend group, without my support network, like my parents, my close, I don't have a huge group of friends, I've got a small, close-knit group of friends, they all know who they are, those people have listened to me. I have been a broken record, but they have always held space for me. I could not have gotten through what I went through if I wasn't, one, being true to myself and being really authentic and really vulnerable, but, like, having the support network that was there to listen and just hear me out every single time. 2 years down the track, 3 years down the track, they never made me feel like, okay, get over it. Like, they never ever made me feel that way.
You know why? Because they all love you, who you are. That's why I hear you saying a lot. But I was just thinking, you probably, I know you understand who you are, but, like, sitting here, I was just thinking, this human being is amazing. Truly, it's easy to deny your existence. It's much harder to walk into it and fully own yourself. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, no, all good. So, though, I guess the one thing that I really grieved hard, and, like, if I think too deeply about it, I still get emotional about it, but, like, for me, motherhood being a huge part of my identity, right? I had my 2 children, and we were, like, in the house that we owned together, and, like, that we had got when I was, like, very early into my pregnancy with my first, and so it was quite, like, symbolic. And I'm quite a symbolic person, like, always trying to find the meaning in things. And so when both my kids were born, their placentas were buried in the ground there, right? A Māori word for the placenta's whenua, and that's the same as like the ground and the land. So you put that in, and I actually just like just a real little side mission, corridor. I was on this training once last year, and there was a kaumātua there who we got onto this topic of like a birth trauma. Anyway, they were talking about the reason why whānau Māori or people who whakapapa Māori bury the whenua into they all go to the urupau, the marae, they'll bury it at the marae and that, all those like places of significance. And he told the story that it's connected to like wairua, and that actually when you bury the whenua in say like the marae, which is like the home space or the whānau space, when you die, that's how your soul or your essence knows how to get home.
Wow.
And I just found that like one of the most profound things I've ever heard. And that was one of those click moments for me. I was like,
wow.
I feel like maybe like that's why I have grieved so hard about leaving house and leaving the land, because my existence, part of my essence and my tamariki's essence is in the soil there.
Absolutely.
And I felt like honestly, it's like that corridor of that book that I mentioned, The Invisible String. Like you feel this invisible connection to it. So not being there and having to walk away from that, like to me was just like it was like the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. And to stay away from it and not be there, and that's where I think so much of that grief came about too, was like I was grieving like the symbolic place, the symbolic thing, but actually it's connected to the essence of me.
Absolutely.
And for someone who's quite deep thinking and, you know, this whole, this existential kind of like, feeling of my existence, mortality, and on a big scale, like I almost see now why I grieved so much.
That's big.
And I don't think like, unless you're someone like yourself, Ivan, I know you've talked about this in the past, is someone who thinks and feels that deep, feeling it in the soul. Like that's why for me, it took so long to move through that grief. And that grief was the only word for me that made sense to me linguistically of like, this is explaining. And then when I had that moment, and this was literally only last year. So it's been almost 4 years. So it's like, 3 years-ish. And I heard that corridor, that kaumātua, and I was just like, it really hit home to me of just like, oh man.
That's
like,
beautiful though.
I feel like there was an explanation now. So like all those tears and all of that, all that, again, shame, embarrassment, mainly embarrassment, like washed away. And I was like, okay. And I can forgive myself in that moment. Because I've just had that explanation. From that person, and it wasn't even directed at me. It was just, it was direct. They were talking about it, and so it was really profound moment for me.
Right, and like what you say, walking away is not a big problem. The problem is walking away from everything you have known and you have created, and having the essence of yourself created that life force. That is not easy task, and that's why when we had that conversation, I was like, man, I really want you to share that journey, because our society now is just looking at every problem, so you just need to get over it. We still have that, despite we talk about mental health, but there's still, the society still have the expectation, it's like, oh, now it's 3 months, you should get over it. And there's a time for grief. It's like, oh, you have 3 months, 3 months I've been put out with you, for these 3 months, please get over it now. Is that?
No, it's not linear, right? No. Grief is so personal. And I guess like another kind of like key person or like support mechanism in all of this was my doctor, going to the GP. And again, coming in with that mindset of like, I'm not going to take just the one offer of like, okay, you can take... do you want to have a script for this or something? Oh, no, thank you, but thank you for offering. But man, that doctor, like I've seen the same doctor all over all these years, bless her, she has listened. so much, and just like being able to like listen and support me in so many moments and give me some like key things about like, you know, just reminding me of like things like mindfulness and reminding me about like what supports are out there, like the well-being support and like, and just trying to encourage me to like think about the things that I already know. It's already in here. I just needed like somebody else, to like remind me, like, okay, like I got this. I hike. I can to nature. Those are my key things. Like two of the things I just like I mentioned, I got back into hiking, and again, hiking on my own as well. Like and being comfortable with that. But another thing that like really got me through. And some of those hardest times was driving down to Kiratahi Beach out on the coast. So you go down to like Waiuku and then you just 5-minute drive from that little township there. It's like a rugged West Coast beach, and just walking the length of the beach.
Wow.
Just doing that, like the sea salt, the fresh air, just like
allowing yourself to breathe.
Just walking in the water. Like all of that kind of stuff, I just felt so like, again, like reset. And I just think like, I feel like those are those like, those things that like, I really want to like gift others. Is like, you know, we know how to do this. And actually, Johann Hari writes about this in his book, Lost Connections, where he talks about, depression, anxiety, and it talks about like this kind of like 7 that are like other options or alternatives to managing or getting through things like anxiety and depression. And one of them he talks about is like that connection to nature, and actually why connecting to nature is so helpful and how intrinsic it is to our like our evolutionary biology. And how our predecessors and our ancestors, you know, walked and they had the nature around them all the time, and just about how that can connect and support within. So it's like I really love all of that kind of stuff because again, it's like it gives me like meaning and like, you know, like who I am in this kind of like whole you know, timeline of everything. So like now, say like 4 years later, I feel like I'm really like almost on that tail end. And I just think like if there's anyone else that is going through this, and like I see this sometimes on group chats, I always just say like, you know, put your seatbelt on and hang on tight because this roller coaster is not like a short one.
Exactly.
It is a long one. Like, I think it was like, I was ringing the bank about something. I think it was either changing my name or like something to do with the accounts or doing something. And we were going through it and I talked about like what I was going through and all of that. I was just really honest. And she did all the things and like set it all up or whatever that she was doing. I can't remember. It was during some of the lockdowns as well. But at the end of the conversation, she was like, oh, hey. I was like, oh, what? She's like, I've been there, done that, and like got the t-shirt. She's like, you'll get through this. And I just was like, oh my God, like, thank you so much. She's like, you've got this. And I just felt so, it was just like, again, those little micro moments of human genuinity and kindness that just made the biggest difference. And I just remember putting the phone down. And again, that like thing, I don't know if you ever do this, so you just sit there for like 5 minutes, just like, oh my God. And I just felt like, oh man, like, and so if, whoever that person was, it made such a difference. And so like I just think about like how I've kind of gone through this whole journey of things, those little moments, you know, the talking to the lady at Kindy, that woman on the phone, you know, all these little moments where I've been able to like, and then other moments where people have then opened up to me and shared what they've gone through, and then we've held each other in that moment for a little bit, and we've both seen each other like on this next human level. It's not just the surface stuff, it's going really deep. And I just think, oh, like those micro moments of kindness that I had, did I just imprint that onto somebody else's life? Because I hope so, and I hope that helped them, just even if it's just taking just that next kind of like step towards that hope and knowing that you can get through. Because I just remember in those early days, I couldn't see further than a week. Literally 1 week. All my future thinking was gone. all my future thinking. And it was like, it's so unlike me. And again, it almost like reminded me of back when I was at uni, when I was, you know, and I just had all that brain blank. That's a scary space to be in.
Absolutely.
It's such a gift of our human existence that we can future think, right? So not having future thinking was so scary. So then being able to finally get to a point where I was able to actually see the future again and have that hope. I am going to get through this. I know I can get through this. And then again, like not having anyone in my friend group made me feel ashamed or embarrassed. Not a single one of those people said to me like, why? I'm sick of hearing this, Jordyn. They were always just there to like listen to me.
And I tell you what, you know, like I'm tearing out again, second time in the same interview. I like that story so much is because I think that is what happened to the world is we forget another person in front of us is human being as well. Regardless at where we stand, receptions, you know, like waiter or someone clean the toilet or whatever, they're all human beings. They're all going through some stuff that we don't know. And even just at that moment where you have to face something that being vulnerable and having that person and say, hey, look, I know how tough this is, but I know you're going to be okay. You felt so seen at that moment. Even just that little small kindness.
And that reminder of like, you might not feel it now, but like you will.
My God, you made me cry twice today. I think that's why people love you because you, I mean, you know, to me, because I feel really deep. So sometimes I feel really hard to connect to other human beings. I have a lot of great friends, but to really have that kind of depth is really hard to find. So in some way, I feel quite a loner, which is okay with me, you know, like, because like that's who I am, I don't mind, but to really hear another human being really understood.
Thanks, Ivan. And and that's why I love all our conversations that we had, and right, it's so healing. Like again, going back to like the timeline, like, I'm 36 years old, right? So if you think about things like my panic attacks that starting from when I was 7, that's almost 30 years experiencing like these things. When I was a kid, I used to call them like I used to like go to my parents' bedroom at that middle of the night or whatever. It was always usually at that moment of before you fall asleep. I'd stand at the end of the bed and I'd be like, Mom, Dad, it's that thing again. I'd call it the thing because I didn't know how to describe it. And again, at that age, you have no idea what it is, but you're literally overcome with not only are you physically hyperventilating, but you have this overwhelming feeling of like I'm gonna die kind of thing. And so dealing with that, so like all of this, but I look back now, I turn around, I look back at my life course and I just think like all of that stuff is part of who I am. It is the makeup of me, right? And I wouldn't be who I am today. And again, going through that realization, that profound realization of I am where I am right now because of all of that stuff, because of those micro moments of kindness, because of those things that I always thought was such a deficit or were negative or like, you know, something that I felt like I was needing to fix or felt like I was broken, actually were all these really beautiful parts of me, and they make up who I am, and I am the way that I am or who I am, and, you know, because of all of that.
I don't even know how to tell you. You make it sound so easy, but someone who walked through that journey, every time when the world betrayed you, when people you trust decided not to trust you, and to show up to the world and say, I'm going to still believe in love, is the hardest thing. It's easy to back away, back into your turtle shelf and say, I have enough. I'm just not going to see the world again. But to, despite all that, still showing out and say, I'm not going to let the world change me. That is a whole different level of love, Jordyn.
And again, like using our mate Brene, like going and like and having that corridor of like going all in. So that was like again one of those things like what you just said. Now I use that mentality of like you go all in into something. Fully who you are, your authentic self, la la la, and you just go all in.
People don't know how uncomfortable I am looking at myself on the camera, but I decided to go all in. I was like, I just, my accents, like my funny accent of Malaysian accent, grammar misspelled, like, fuck it, I just couldn't.
Yeah. Who I am. And I think that's the thing, like, when we think about things like, connection, belonging, and identity, like, even just I think about, like, our rangatahi at the moment and, like, young people or tamariki in the world, like, just like that, just reminding them that they, can just be and exist as they are, and actually, like, everyone else around them, like there is that kindness there, even though all of the stuff that's been happening around the world, there are there's still kindness, it's still there, and you'll have all these moments in your life where you're reminded of that kindness and like what that looks like, and I really hope that does just instill, like, I guess, like faith and hope, and just that, that you can just kind of face the world knowing that you don't have to fit in, you just
I to be honest, it's amazing. That's called grace, my friend. That is truly called grace.
And I guess that's another thing is like, like stepping into, like, being really vulnerable and knowing that, like, you can do that not only in your personal life, but like in the professional realm as well, in the workplace. When I first came into this current mahi that I'm in, I had to, like, I didn't mention it in my first interview, but my second interview with my would-be manager, I had to be honest about where I was at. I was only 6 months into the separation from when I got into this mahi.
Wow.
So I was, like, still, like, a mess.
Yeah.
But this opportunity came up and I could not turn it down. The universe was saying to me, like, this is, like, your next step in your career, and you cannot let what you're going through right now prevent you from taking that, like, leap of faith. So I took that leap of faith, and I was like, again, I'm going to have to be really, like, open and honest about where I'm at in my grief journey. And I was really open and honest, and that person was very understanding, and, like, again, really validating. And I was like, okay. Like, that's, I'd never really done that to that extent, like in a workplace. But I think because I'd had that positive experience with my previous TL, a manager, when I did that 6 months earlier when we separated, because I had to ring them and tell them. And like I said before, we even started this kōrero, like, when that happened, like, they knew through my tears that this was not just some little riff that you have. It was, my marriage has ended, and I don't know what to do. But I'm telling you guys because you guys are my bosses. And they could hear the heartbreak, but they were, again, so supportive. And if I hadn't have been that honest, I can't imagine going through what I went through without telling people, and without getting the support from not only my friends and family, albeit small network, but from those kind of key people in my workplace. Because without them, I think it would have just been so much more harder, and I would have had to do it. I would have had to grieve alone. I would have had to be in survival mode alone, and I really don't think I would have been able to, like, get through it the way that I had or have, like, without again those human beings just being really kind in those moments to me, and never making me feel ashamed, and genuinely wanting to help me and support me. And so I just think, like, that power that comes with not only being vulnerable, with communicating and being really open and honest about where you're at, can just be so critical into how someone gets through a life event like that.
Having that supportive environment and understanding. And I have to tell you, though, I mean, like, throughout that time I met you anyway, but I have never come across you were having certain situation that you have to deal with from work. It never for any moment I even knew that was what's going on. That just show what kind of person you are. You're sitting in front of me sharing all this vulnerability, and yet if without knowing that, I couldn't even tell that was what's going on. Wow. That's called courage again. Like,
and I think it's also like ownership. Like, again, what that person told me all those years ago, this is who you are. If I can just stand firm and, like, that acceptance, because again, acceptance was always like quite a thing.
Yeah.
I had to accept my new future. I had to accept that there was things that I didn't get right, that I had done wrong or did or didn't do, that there was a part of me that may have been unlovable to somebody else. I had to go through and work through all of that.
Wow.
And I haven't mentioned, but I'll mention my partner. My partner has been really amazing, amazing person. But like when I met him, it was again when I was at like what I would say my emotional rock bottom. Now you would probably think that occurred in the beginning, but it didn't. It was at 18 months afterwards that I hit my emotional rock bottom, because it was survival mode for so long. And then I think it was like, must have been like maybe around the time that we signed the divorce papers or something around that time, but it was about 18 months, and I was just feeling like I was at my emotional rock bottom. And I think it was because I had this idea in my head of like, I should be over this by now. I should be over it. And so that's when, although I'd been trying not to feel it, the shame came out, and the shame kind of dominated. And then, and I was just this crying kind of mess. So I was crying so much. I'm so glad I don't cry anymore. Honestly, I remember thinking, because I used to always pull up like even if it was just like after school drop off or what have you, whether I was working from home or working from the office or whatever on the weekend, I'd always like to cry in my car and then I'd cry, do my grief work, so to speak, but also because it was like so overwhelming. And I remember thinking like, okay, surely I'm not going to be doing this in like X amount of years time. Like I'm not going to cry as much, and I can't wait for the day that I'm not crying as much. So thankfully that has now happened, and I'm not crying as much. But I just remember there was this day or night where he had come over, I think because I'd had like a fridge delivered or something like that. I got a fridge delivered and I needed help, whatever. And I was just overwhelmed with emotion, and I was just sitting on the couch and I was just like bawling my eyes out. Poor guy. And he like vacuumed my house, and he like sorted the fridge and like cleaned the bench, and he was just helping make my environment, just because he knows that I like everything like nice and clean and all of that before it like whatever. And I just always remember that moment where I was just bawling my eyes out on the couch, and he just helped me without judgment and without being like freaked out. This girl that I've just met is like crying all the time about like her marriage that has ended, kind of thing. No judgment. And then just sat with me.
Do you know, you describe so many like moments where we all should be like that. You know, like he understands you're going through something difficult. Instead of judging you or freaking out, I'm going to show out to her, let her know what she's going through is normal, and allow her to process without taking it personally, and still do what I'm supposed to do to support. That's beautiful.
And again, those micro moments that to somebody else might be like, oh, like, so what? But that meant a lot to me on that night, in that moment, when I felt like I was at like a emotional rock bottom, and again without judgment, and all of that kind of, it was just all compassion and kindness, and I just think that's so important. And actually my kids, they always say something to me like when we're driving, it's just like you never know, you really don't know and I guess that's come up quite often in my own being in my mahi as well. It's just that like you really do, you never know what someone's going through, or you know what they're facing in their life, and also like having compassion around that word grief.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not necessarily like that binary thing like it's because someone has like died or passed away or what have you. It's actually like a significant loss.
Absolutely.
And that grief can look so different in so many different ways, and that people shouldn't feel like what they're going through is like.
And my friend, I felt like I met your soul.
Aww,
Notice
thanks for giving me safe space to share.
Your story is so powerful, man.
Thank you.
I know I'm going to cry again when I watch it. But I love every moment of it.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thank you for trusting me.
And I guess that's that final message, is like there's always help and there's always hope.
Yeah.